This is Throne and Liberty. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the latest MMORPG experience where you are enjoying this really great looking world with a great sense of scope and a ton of, well, basically your usual MMORPG type missions where you go out and you do quests and whatnot, but they do attempt to mix things up a bit in this one, just in terms of your goals, how the missions are structured, and the different places you can go along the way within this free-to-play MMORPG experience, set in the vast open world of Solisium. There's PvP, there's PvE, there's worlds that are changing in terms of weather and environment and time of day, and it's really, really quite lovely, however you want to go to play. So what are we getting here? It looks like it's a dynamic 4K resolution, 60 FPS. Now you're going to notice that there are some frame drops when we're playing. It depends on where you go and what you're doing and what you're seeing. It's definitely not necessarily perfect in regards to performance, but it's not too bad either. And actually, it's a really rather interesting world in terms of scope and just what it has to offer gameplay wise. So yeah, you can play it alone, or you can kind of team up with others and explore and see what it has to offer. There's a lot of activities and a lot of places to see, and there are very many unique kind of locales to get across, which is really interesting. I have noticed that there does seem to be some texture loading type issues too within the world. So if you're going to some areas quickly, you'll notice that it takes a second for the textures to kind of render in. But once you're in there and you're kind of going through areas that you're kind of been through in the same instance of playing, it actually holds up pretty well and quite flawlessly. As I noted, this game really is quite beautiful, and the sense of like scale is rather stunning. I'm sort of blown away by the draw distance and like just all the stuff going on out there in the world. It's really, really quite interesting. You make your character and then you're kind of plopped in here and you just kind of go from like setting to setting. Okay, I was going to show you off. You jump and you can become like a bird, and when you're in the water you can become like an otter. There's a bunch of different like animals you can sort of become with unique abilities and stuff. Well, unique movement abilities, I guess you would say. So that in itself is kind of interesting. And then, as I mentioned, there's tons of different quests and activities for you to kind of come across. And that's where I was mentioning, it's sometimes it does the usual MMORPG thing where it's kind of like, okay, you gotta kill these enemies. Especially the contracts. The contracts are kind of a lot of, kill this stuff. But it's also weird because there's actual focused story stuff. Like, one of the cool things I did was we went into like this, there's dungeons, but not necessarily a dungeon, as to say, but there was this like instance area as part of the main quest where you had to go and fight in this dungeon area. It was all like structured, and the narrative isn't necessarily the best in this, but it's actually got some interesting characters, and you're constantly coming across new individuals and places. It almost seemed like they weren't fully utilizing their environment, because like you'd go through an area and be like, okay, well this is, say, the goblin area. The goblin area actually, I think, was like a bit of a meaty section compared to other ones. But there's one with like birds, and you're through it in like 2 seconds. Which I thought was really, really weird because, essentially you're not even using or utilizing that space. And I guess maybe the idea is you're supposed to grind yourself to go and kill things. And I don't know, there was a point where the leveling kind of popped up on me. It caught me by surprise how much higher level things were against me, but no, it really is actually quite an interesting setup and experience for this one. There's tons of different abilities, and then quite a few different, I wouldn't say class options. Like, the game kind of opens up and it gives you a wide range of different weapons and tools. So you could be like, okay, I want to be, like a sword fighter here, or I want to have like a broadsword, like a single greatsword that I'm using, or I want to have a wand, or I want to have a staff. And yeah, it kind of opens up and allows you to sort of pick and choose, and you'd be like, okay, well, I like this, I like that. And then from that point forward, as you continue to move along, you're essentially kind of like upgrading and moving through certain trees. Like you're not restricted, and you have that freedom to change things up as you continue to progress and move along, which is rather interesting. At least I thought that was kind of cool how they were tackling that sort of situation. My health is low. Yeah, I see that. This guy's, the butcher's a lot tougher than I thought the butcher was going to be, which is a little surprising. I'm actually probably gonna die running away cowardly into the fields. But yeah, no, it's quite neat. And as you can tell, again, like the sense, like the scope here is really, really quite wonderful. I'm amazed by the, you know, variety of like areas and stuff that you can come across. It's kind of wild. And then yeah, transforming, and the bird thing's weird. Like it sort of does this inverted control thing for the bird. I don't know. It's kind of odd. It really is kind of odd. But it seems like there's like a ton of gameplay in this. Like I wouldn't say packing in the time, but like I've been playing quite a bit of this, and it does seem like there's just quite a lot to do if you'd like to, but it doesn't push you also into the realm of just doing the same old MMORPG kind of things where you're just killing enemies and moving from one area to the next. They actually seem to have some level of, I guess you would say, story content going on in this. It really is fascinating from that perspective. Yeah, I find it quite interesting. Because I played a lot of these games over the years. Like, I've actually played a ton of MMORPGs. And I think you've maybe seen that too on the channel. If you've been watching stuff, like I've covered, I think almost all of them that are available in at least the Xbox for sure. I've covered all of them. And it's just interesting to see when anyone pops up and what different things they try to add to your experience, what different ways they try to mix it up. Because usually what happens is an MMORPG comes out and it's got great visuals, and that's sort of, you know, the base plate of it, and you're always like, oh, this looks so good, this looks so nice. And it's more really about the long term of like what content they add, how the gameplay loop is, how it keeps you engaged and interested. You know, what are the skills like, what are the abilities like. And I'd say there's actually like a fair, you know, amount of things going on in this one. Like, it's actually kind of impressive. And to me, it came out of nowhere. Like, I genuinely wasn't expecting this. It was literally like, you know, just a few days before even kind of doing this video where I was first even notified of the existence of this game. It's genuinely interesting, is what it is. It came out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh, cool, new one of these to check out. I'm always down for that, you know, always down for cool role-playing type games. So it's like, you know, I wouldn't say it's got like the strongest of narratives, I wouldn't say it's got the most craziest of gameplay, but it is kind of interesting and sort of fun from the loop perspective of if you like MMORPGs and you want something that, like, is within the box in the realm of what you're used to, but does mix things up a little bit, which I think people that play this genre are probably looking for, is a bit of a mix-up from just doing the same sort of thing. And you can like upgrade your skills and your talent. You can also hold X or hold LT and then go into this menu, and you can change your camera settings if you need to, you know, kind of zoom in or reset your camera. So you can choose how close to your character you are as well. Because that's something that some people care about too when playing these types of games, is how much you can see of your character in the surrounding environment, right? It's a big part of that setup, is being able to essentially get the viewing angle you want. Like, your screen, it's certainly cluttered for sure, but that's what these types of games do, is they give you a lot of informational things popping up everywhere, which I think is fine. I mean, I'm used to that kind of thing for these types of games, and I don't mind it. It's really what you're used to, and if you want something a little bit unique and different, like, I think the world is quite gorgeous. And you've got these, like, adorable little, like, creatures. I think they're called, like, 8 moles or something like that. You get Helpy, I think is the first one. They're like little crochet, adorable creatures. And they're essentially here to like support you in different ways, and they do different tools during combat. Like they provide different assets and tools during combat. It's really, really quite interesting, yeah. I'm actually really surprised at that gameplay element, for sure, in this one. Is just like these adorable little things, because I thought it was kind of silly. And then, you know, your first helpy or whatever vanishes at a certain point, and you're like, oh, no! And then you get, like, a new critter, and you're like, oh, this is cool. And then, you know, it's just kind of following you around. It's sort of like a pet, but, like, a little bit more, you know, kind of complex, if that makes sense. And there's different factional things, too, and guild-type things. Like, it's got all the markings that you would kind of expect out of this genre. And it's almost like a little... I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but, you know, because you definitely move through it in a fine way, but it is big. Like, there is a lot of stuff going on. You start on, like, Whisper Island or whatever, and it's just this huge, huge world. Like, there's so much to see and to do, and I guess that's why it kind of pushes you along pretty quickly through the different areas, is because you'd basically be, you know, you'd almost never progress with all the stuff going on here. Did I finish accepted contracts? No contracts in progress? Oh, well, maybe my contract ran out. I thought that's what I was doing, was a contract. Maybe I did one and I didn't realize it just finished or something like that. Yeah, kind of cool. It is an interesting choice, though. I will say that for sure, to do this sort of thing. Okay, why does the bird always do cannot use vertical controls? Okay. It's just always weird because I want to use the bird stuff, but the bird just seems to be a little tricky to kind of use, if that makes sense. A little annoying. This is like the spiders area. I don't really like the spiders. I've entered a conflict zone. We have to defeat this guy. I don't know if I can do this alone. But yeah, they've got all these rotating events too going on, all these different moments. And then you can come across like other players doing stuff. It's, like I said, it's quite fascinating, the world they've set up here and the gameplay. Like the difference in gameplay too. Like it's got familiar stuff, but they are trying to actually do something a little bit unique with this one. So I don't know if this is going to be something that like fully catches everyone's interest, but it's nice to jump in here and take a look at a different game within this genre and have some, you know, fun going around, building up a character, exploring and stuff like that. I'm mostly curious what the full scope of this is going to be. So we got like 50 minutes to kill this thing. I feel like we're barely kind of doing... Wow. I feel like we're barely doing any damage against this thing. I guess I gotta run back into the area, eh? Holy. That thing was killer. Is what that was. That thing was genuinely killer. Okay, so will I just plummet to my death if I run out of energy on this owl or this bird thing? The bird stuff, it's kind of iffy on what works for you and what doesn't. But there's lots of different creatures, lots of different monsters, rotating world events, things that pop up. I think there should be plenty for you to do and sink your teeth into, like it. And it's got actual story stuff too, which is the biggest thing, right? Like you're actually moving through story content, which I think is great. Because a lot of the MMORPGs, they actually sort of really skimp on narrative. And as I said, I don't really feel like the narrative I've come across in this is anything too wild or crazy, but there is some semblance of a plot and character development between areas, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's going to be the loop that keeps you in here, but more of the fact that you're just kind of doing a role-playing, you know, kind of adventure. I really feel like we're not actually hurting this thing at all. Like, these guys, these are other real players, but, like, have we even damaged this thing? I don't even know if we really damaged this thing.
Pray to the gods to fill the entire world with light.
Kind of feels like we're just mildly inconveniencing this monstrous thing as we're going about exploring. That is definitely for sure. I am curious how much they are dedicated to like the evolving world too. That was a big thing they've kind of been going over for this one, as they do want to grow and change things. But I think this looks really nice. It certainly is a modern, current gen MMORPG experience. And as I stated, you know, it's a free-to-play setup. So it's not really hard to dive in and take a look at and see if you like what it has to offer. It certainly holds your hand for quite a bit and gives you a lot of stuff. But when you really get into it and you're sort of fighting in that, I think you'll find it to be rather interesting, or possibly interesting. That's the biggest thing, right? Is whether or not you're super... Did everybody just give up? They're like, we're doing no damage at this at all? Looks like everyone absolutely just gave up on fighting this thing. Which is kind of funny. We're just kind of fighting giant spiders. No, this stuff is cool when you're running around interacting with other players. Like, a lot of when I was kind of streaming and showcasing this game was like sort of solo. Like, I'd run into people in towns, but you wouldn't really see too many people running about in the, you know, in the environment stuff. So it's kind of cool to come across that thing, as to say, right? Especially since I'm a little over-leveled for this area, which is nice. Well, they're basically around my level, so they can kill me still pretty easily. These guys are just watching while I fight this spider. Just duking it out here. I've had it locked onto this other player. I have entered a PvP clash zone. Super Waffles Drift. We're not fighting the giant, another player is attacking me? Why? I wanted to fight this, large monster thing. You're level 12. What are you doing? You're not very smart here. To be fair, you attacked me. I didn't want to attack you, so... What are you hoping some other player is going to come and do work for you here? You coward. You're the level 12 that wanted to attack me. I didn't do anything. Okay, whatever. I'm not too bothered by it. I don't really care. So yeah, I am intrigued to see more of the deep end of this one. But I think I've got like a focus on it. You know, it provides a good amount of gameplay. It pushes you along from zone to zone to zone. It doesn't necessarily ever like force you to be stuck in one area grinding forever or having to kill the same repetitive things. Like, the game does actually seem to kind of respect your time as an MMORPG experience, which is sort of refreshing. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of nice. And then the ambience of the world too. It's really, really quite beautiful. Like, I really do like what they've done here. And now Peppa Pink is just here stealing my kills and points. That's great. Oh, this person is a lion too. I've just got a sad kind of tiger thing going on. Yeah, I don't know. I like this, I think, for sure, in terms of this genre. I'm finding this one to be intriguing. I am curious how much time I'll have to dedicate it to this sort of, like, role-playing game, but yeah, it does look lovely, doesn't it? It has a nice style to it. And yeah, there's some performance things and some technical stuff they need to iron out, but for the most part, this is a pretty well-polished time. It offers a pretty good sense of scope and detail and content and adventure things and making stuff and crafting things and exploring and finding notes and the very heavy amount of lore, which I quite appreciate, actually. Might sound sound silly or weird, but this game actually does have a good amount of lore. You can find these, like, your waypoints basically are an introduction to every zone you go into. So you can get an idea of, like, what this area is, what the space is like, it's a neat touch, and it's an appreciated expansion upon the idea that like this is a lived-in world, and they're trying to make it feel like that, which is pretty cool. So kind of a neat free-to-play game, MMORPG action, something you might find intriguing.